So, order. I just want to give a 1 minute warning here. Okay, we're going to start in 1 minute. Order. Order, please. So this is the Standing Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development. My name is Tom Taggart. I'm the MLA for Colchester North and chair of this committee. Today, we will hear from witnesses regarding energy pricing. So I'd ask everybody to please turn off their phones or put them on silent. In the case of an emergency, we're going to go out the door here and meet on Grand Parade. I will now ask the committee members to introduce themselves for the record by stating their name and their constituency. Starting on my left here.
Ryan Robichaud, MLA for Clare.
Good afternoon, Danny McGillivray, MLA for Pictou Centre.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ali Goke, MLA for Clare Park West.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rick Burns. I'm the MLA for Hammonds Plains Lucasville.
Good afternoon, everyone. Derek Mumbercat, the MLA for City Member 2.
Ian Rankin, Timberley Prospect.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Claudia Chender, Dartmouth South.
Good afternoon. Susan LeBlanc, MLA for Dartmouth North.
I would also like to note the presence of Legislative Counsel Genevieve Harvey and Legislative Committee Clerk Tamer Naseba. And so I'd like to welcome all the witnesses, and I'll ask, starting on my left, if you'll introduce yourselves.
Martha
yeah, sorry, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Martha Casey, Efficiency, Nova Scotia.
Stephen MacDonald, Deputy Minister of Energy.
Frazer, Egerton, Department of Opportunities and Social Development.
Chris Lanteigne, Nova Scotia Power. Chris Benjamin, Ecology Action Centre.
Brian Gifford, the Affordable Energy Coalition.
And I will ask, there's some folks that have additional witnesses, if they'd like to introduce them at this time. Where would we, are we good, or? We'll start with Ms. Casey, if you'd like to introduce here.
Thank you. This is my colleague, Rob Burns, Interim Chief Operating Officer at Efficiency 1.
Mr. MacDonald, Deputy MacDonald.
Thank you. Attending with me from the department is Peter Craig, Director of Electricity.
Is there any others? Thank you. So would any of the witnesses like to make opening statements? No? Okay, well, we'll start with Deputy MacDonald, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today to talk about energy pricing and affordability in Nova Scotia. We know many households are struggling with the rising cost of living, including energy costs. In Nova Scotia, energy prices are higher than some other jurisdictions because we still rely heavily on imported fuels to heat our homes, power our businesses, and produce electricity. That dependence exposes us to global price volatility, supply disruptions, and sudden cost increases beyond our control. As an example, we're seeing higher costs for gasoline and home heating oil right now because ships filled with oil are being held up in the Strait of Hormuz due to the attacks in Iran. Government is supporting Nova Scotians in many ways, but I'll focus my remarks in two connected areas. The first is helping individuals and families who are most in need pay their household energy bills. And secondly, taking actions that can reduce or stabilize energy costs for everyone over the long term. Energy efficiency is one of the most immediate ways to reduce someone's energy costs. Programs delivered through Efficiency Nova Scotia, such as the Home Warming Program and the Home Energy Assessment and Moderate Income Rebate Programs, help Nova Scotians pay for upgrades so that they use less energy and reduce their monthly bills. Since 2022, government has directed almost $250 million in provincial funds, and that leveraged more than $300 million in federal funding to help 47,000 households achieve permanent savings as much as $1,500 per year or more once they upgrade their homes. And those savings last for years and years and years. Government offers several other programs to help people pay their bills, some related to energy and some to help with other household costs. Things like the Heating Assistance Rebate Program, the Home Energy Assistance Top-Up, the Seniors Care Grant, Your Energy Rebate Program, and millions of dollars in diversion funding from Opportunities and Social Development to help people with utility arrears so they can stay housed or get connected to stable housing. And that's in addition to broader affordability measures like lowering personal income taxes, the school lunch program, more affordable housing options for thousands of Nova Scotians, increases in the programs that support Nova Scotians who need it most, like income assistance and disability support, and many other federal government initiatives supported by the province. The province's other area of attention is in addressing energy costs at the system level. The Clean Power Plan is well underway, reducing our reliance on imported fuels and improving our energy security with lower cost, clean energy solutions like local wind and solar power and battery technologies. The new Independent Energy System Operator, or the IESO in Nova Scotia, was established as an independent, nonprofit organization in 2024 to ensure electricity system planning is based on true need and that procurements are completed and chosen in the best interests of ratepayers. And government has taken several actions to protect electricity ratepayers from Nova Scotia Power's proposed sharp rate increases. Things like capping rates through legislation, providing a long-term loan to Nova Scotia Power at favorable provincial borrowing rates to lower the fuel costs passed on to ratepayers, extending relief from some greenhouse gas emission reduction requirements, and intervening in regulatory processes to demand more scrutiny from the Energy Board. No one wants to see the cost of living and bills continue to rise. All of the measures I mentioned today work together to help close the gap for Nova Scotians, many of who are struggling to make ends meet. But it will take more than provincial programs to truly address energy poverty and affordability in this province. We need to grow our economy to generate new opportunities that create jobs, good jobs with better wages, so more Nova Scotians can pay their bills. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask Mr. Vreede to introduce himself, and then we'll move on with opening statements. I'll give you a chance to kind of settle in, okay, before we come to your opening remarks. Is that okay? Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Leon Vreede. I work as a sustainability planner for the town of Bridgewater. My apologies for walking in late.
So I recognize Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Efficiency One's purpose is to transform the way people use energy. We work with households, businesses, and institutions across the province to help them use energy more efficiently, lower their bills, and at the same time, reduce pressure on the energy system. This includes everything from supporting home heating upgrades and energy-efficient equipment to working with large industrial customers to optimize their operations and reduce energy waste at scale. While Efficiency One does not set energy prices, our work is directly connected to what Nova Scotians ultimately pay and to the long-term sustainability of the system. Efficiency programs lower energy use, reduce system costs, and help keep future rates stable. Every kilowatt hour saved means less electricity needs to be produced, helping avoid higher and often unpredictable fuel costs that are passed on to Nova Scotians. Our programs put more money back in the pockets of Nova Scotians when they need it most. Energy pricing is a critical issue for families and businesses, particularly in the context of rising costs, economic uncertainty, and the transition to a cleaner energy system. Energy efficiency is the only practical way to directly influence a power bill. A customer can change a light bulb, install a smart thermostat, or put in insulation, and they will feel it on their next energy bill. Affordability is central to our mandate. We design and deliver programs that prioritize long-term, measurable bill reductions, particularly for low and moderate income households, renters, small businesses, and rural communities. These are the customers who are often most exposed to energy price volatility and who benefit the most from permanent reductions in energy use. For the nearly 40% of Nova Scotians living in energy poverty, this is about being able to afford to stay warm, avoid difficult trade-offs, and have greater certainty in monthly costs. By focusing on improvements that last often for decades, these investments provide protection from rising costs in both the long and short term. For example, installing a mini-split heat pump in an oil-heated home can lower energy costs by between 15 and 25%, and participating in the free efficient product installation program can save homeowners and renters up to 12% annually on heating costs. Our work to date is helping Nova Scotians save more than $6.4 billion in lifetime energy costs, including $849 million for low-income homeowners and renters. We could not do what we do and continue to have the impact that we have without significant investment by both the province and the Government of Canada. Our collective impact on energy poverty is significant, increasingly important, and felt right across the province. Thank you.
I recognize the Executive Director Egerton.
It doesn't matter.
Egerton. Sorry.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So my name is Frazer Egerton. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Operations and Innovation with the Department of Opportunities and Social Development. I'm very aware now what a mouthful that is. So a little bit about the department. Across our work, we see every day that many Nova Scotians are feeling stretched. They're facing rising costs, whether it's housing, whether it's food, utilities, and this in turn can create real strain and make it harder for people to maintain stability. Our department's focus is on supporting people through those pressures. Our role is to respond to those pressures in practical, person-centered ways, working with partners across government and in communities to help people regain footing and to avoid crisis. That shared goal of supporting stability and well-being is why I appreciate the opportunity to appear before the committee today. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Mr. Vreede.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. As I said, my name is Leon Vreede. I'm representing the town of Bridgewater. Here are distressing facts from my community. 1 out of 3 of our residents struggle to pay bills, juggle bills to pay for utilities. 1 out of 3 residents cut back on groceries to do so. 1 in 6 cut back on health care and medication expenses. 1 in 5 shiver inside their homes in winter because they're so cold. 1 in 3 of those can see their breath inside their homes. 2 out of every 5 families in Bridgewater live in energy poverty. These numbers come from McGill University's research team that we've partnered with to complete the deepest community-scale longitudinal study of energy poverty in Canada. These are just numbers. What is hard to communicate is the hardship, suffering, and shame so often faced by the people that make up these numbers. The fact of the matter is, energy poverty is a crushing problem faced by all communities in Nova Scotia. Municipalities can be willing and capable partners who want to see dramatic and responsible action taken. Structural, technical, and financial solutions exist. Several of them have been tested and have delivered meaningful results in Bridgewater. Our program partnerships include extensive collaborative relationships with Efficiency Nova Scotia Power, the Nova Scotia Community College, and the Clean Foundation, through which we have been developing and testing advanced programs and new technologies geared specifically to help low-income and equity-deserving community members reduce their energy burden, achieve stable and predictable home energy costs, and make informed decisions about their energy futures. Despite our progress, our Council remains deeply concerned about the problem of energy poverty. We also remain deeply committed to finding structural solutions to this challenge, solutions that are not rocket science, they are good science and good public policy. This includes increasing public access and financing to affordable home retrofits using standard off-the-shelf technologies, improving integrations between existing programs and connecting them with local and municipal programs where possible, tightening regulations and incentives to increase the energy efficiency of rental housing, creating trauma-informed energy navigation and support services for residents that need it, and implementing province-wide upstream solutions, including the recommendations of the Colton Report, which our Council has endorsed. I urge this committee to do the right thing and move forward with purpose and willpower to implement the structural solutions for which we and our partners have been advocating for several years. Our citizens and our climate need it, and we are willing to help in any way we can. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir. I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here today. I've met with many of you before. If you don't know me, again, I'm Chris Lanteigne, and I lead our customer care team at Nova Scotia Power. My role is focused on customers, answering their questions, finding solutions, and helping them navigate their electricity bills. I'm pleased to be part of this discussion alongside these representatives who are with me today. The organizations here are our partners in this important work. At Nova Scotia Power, our approved rates reflect a combination of fuel costs, investments required to keep the electricity system safe and reliable, and regulatory decisions that guide how our utility and the system operate. From a safety and system reliability are all about keeping their lights and heats on, reducing the frequency and duration of outages, supporting the economy, and investing for the future. The investments that we make and how they are reflected in rates are reviewed and approved through a regulatory framework governed by the province of Nova Scotia and overseen by an independent regulator. Over the winter and early spring, I spent time in communities across Nova Scotia, including Middleton, Truro, Guysborough, Digby, Yarmouth, Sydney, Port Hawkesbury, and Bridgewater, meeting with and talking to customers about their billing questions and concerns. In my conversations with customers about their bills, it's been clear that many people are feeling the pressure of the rising cost of living and want more options for managing their energy bills, whether they heat with oil or electricity. That feedback is important and something I regularly bring back to my team so it informs how we listen, how we respond, and how we show up for customers every day. Clarity, predictability, and transparency matter. That's why my teams are focused on helping customers find an option that works for them. We continue to make progress with an in-house low-income advocate who works together with our customer service associates to support customers with available options, including equal billing, payment plans at 0% interest that allow costs to be spread over 12 or 24 months based on those individual circumstances. Recognizing the significant impact last year's cyber incident had on our billing, we took additional steps to reduce immediate pressure on customers. This included no disconnections for non-payment, no interest applied, no late fees. Instead, our teams continue to work one-on-one with customers to help them get back on track in a way that was realistic and manageable. In addition to our in-house advocacy efforts and in collaboration with advocacy partners, Nova Scotia Power has contributed to the Salvation Army Administered Heat Fund, and we remain committed to this important program. We also meet regularly with organizations supporting Nova Scotians, including people at this table, and we're pleased to participate and we're pleased to learn from the Energy Poverty Task Force. We know there is still work to do and remain open to constructive and ongoing conversations about energy costs and affordability. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, and I recognize Mr. Benjamin. Thank you.
Thank you. The organization Egerton told me the story of a senior on a fixed income named Mr. Baboye. He's on dialysis and has been waiting for a kidney for 10 years. He lives in an old Nova Scotia housing building with his wife and children. He typically pays Nova Scotia Power $300 to $500 per month, and that cuts deep into his money for groceries and other necessities, and yet it still doesn't cover the bill, so each month the bill gets higher. His latest bill was a real shocker, $1,200. How's he ever going to get that paid? The hardest part of Mr. Baboye's story is how common it is. At least 1 in 3 Nova Scotia households pays more than 6% of income on energy. Of those, 72% delay spending on other essentials, like food. 46% have late or missed payments, and 8% have had their electricity disconnected. In early 2024, the Clean Electricity Solutions Task Force recommended fixing energy poverty, following the Ontario model. Then, the Energy Poverty Task Force, which EAC was part of, hired economist Roger Colton, who wrote the Ontario program and dozens of others like it, to create a made-in-Nova Scotia solution based on our unique energy mix, which is heavy on oil and wood, with many old buildings that don't meet modern building codes, and people with relatively low incomes. Oil-heated homes spend 80% more on home energy than electrically heated homes. Oil is volatile, subject to spiking prices, as happened when Russia invaded Ukraine, and again when the USA and Israel bombed Iran. Government-funded assistance through programs like the Heating Assistance Rebate Program, or HARP, reduce energy poverty. Last year, government reduced HARP payments to $400 and decreased the income a household can earn and qualify, which cut thousands of homes from that program. In a way forward, Roger Colton recommended a program with 4 components. Government just recently committed $30 million to fracking, mostly incentives for industry. For about $50 million net of the HARP savings, we could provide 4 things. 1, an on-bill energy discount of 50% for households earning below the low-income cutoff. 2, an arrears forgiveness program. 3, an emergency intervention fund. And 4, ramped up energy efficiency programming for low-income households. If a household participates in any one of these 4, they're given access to all 4 components so that Mr. Baboye and people in his situation can afford their energy bills. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I recognize Mr. Gifford.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this issue. Electricity pricing is one part of what determines how much Nova Scotians pay for energy services. It gets a lot of attention, but it is essential to look at the larger picture. Insulation lowers bills, heat pumps lower bills, oil price shocks increase energy costs, with about 30% of Nova Scotians still heating with oil. The oil price spikes in 2022 and today caused by wars create great hardship for all, but especially for lower income Nova Scotians. Efficiency One's energy poverty visualization tool is the most accurate tool available for estimating energy poverty in Nova Scotia as prices rise and fall. The best ways to lower energy bills are electrification, including oil to heat pumps, aggressive efficiency measures, renewable energy and battery backup in the electricity system, and credits on the bills of low-income households. Nova Scotia's track record is mixed. The significant support for home warming and other well-designed efficiency programs have lowered bills for over 27,000 low and moderate income households. With federal help, the oil to heat pump program has lowered bills for thousands more. As oil prices skyrocketed and electricity rates increased in 2022, the Nova Scotia government increased the heating assistance rebate program from $200 to $1,000 per year. The government agreed to join a new energy poverty task force that we proposed, which made it possible for the task force to get started. The government's goals of closing coal-fired plants and increasing renewables to 80% of electricity generation are necessary and admirable actions that create stable, affordable pricing. The plans for offshore wind will help Nova Scotians while creating income and helping the world choose renewables. All of this has been very important and helpful in making energy costs more affordable in Nova Scotia. On the other hand, the government decided against creating a better targeted home energy assistance program as recommended by the Energy Poverty Task Force and the Clean Electricity Solutions Task Force set up by the government itself. This is a lost opportunity for much more effective relief on high oil and electricity bills for low-income households. The government decided to go slowly in implementing a new national step building code in Nova Scotia, a lost opportunity for lower bills in new homes. The new independent electricity system operator is locking us into an expensive technology and high operating costs that will increase bills for decades by proceeding with gas, diesel plants to back up renewables and meet peak electricity demand. Batteries are now cheaper than gas diesel plants. There is now evidence batteries can meet the specified needs of the electricity system. Proponents believe that they can meet the specified, that's a repeat. The IESO should issue a technology-neutral request for proposals to determine the lowest cost and best technology to meet the needs of the electricity system and to keep electricity prices more affordable. Thank you very much.
So I thank everybody for the comments. I want to remind everyone that as we go through the question and answer period, you need to wait for me to, or for your light to come on, and which activates your microphone, and Les TV will recognize you. So we're going to start the first round of questions with the NDP Caucus for 20 minutes, followed by the Liberals for 10 minutes, and the PC for 30 minutes. And so I recognize the official leader, or the leader of the official opposition.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I think I've spoken with almost all of you at one time or another. I wish we were reporting more progress, particularly on the task force today. But I'm glad to have the opportunity to bring this issue forward at a time when, as Mr. Benjamin in particular pointed out, and I think Mr. Vreede, so many families are experiencing the real consequences of the high cost of energy and the lack of support required to deal with that, making very difficult choices. As was mentioned, nearly 2 years ago, the Energy Poverty Task Force recommended the 4-part plan that Mr. Benjamin took us through. And I think every group represented here today, although maybe some with different hats today, was represented in that group. But since it was released, people's bills have continued to go up. And, you know, while I think a few of the introductory comments sort of centered on geopolitical instability, I would suggest that that trend was in place long before the latest insecurity in the Middle East. I think that is a trend line that we saw happening and that would have continued to happen nonetheless. People's bills have increased. And I think importantly, as a context for this conversation, in the latest rate decision from the Energy Board, they made it very clear in their decision that it was not in their purview to address affordability or to help people address their bills. And so, you know, if they don't have that power, then that work must be done by government, led by government, I would suggest, you know, obviously in collaboration with partners. And so I guess my first question is to Deputy MacDonald, now in his broader role, not just looking at demand side, but looking at the whole energy system. And we've asked this question, and it's a good opportunity to ask it again today. When will we see, you know, affordability programs or action on this excellent report that was already created to help people with their power bills in this province?
I recognize, excuse me, I recognize Deputy MacDonald.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Affordability across the board is a real challenge right now, whether that's food, rent, and of course energy prices. And there's several things that government has done, and the province has done to help address energy affordability. And the way I like to think about in my current role and in past roles around the energy affordability, I really like to think about it in terms of three components. The first is the price of energy. Second is the usage of energy. And the third is incomes. Those are the three primary determining factors around energy affordability, if you will. Around the price of energy, there's several things that the province has done to help ensure that the price of energy that Nova Scotians pay, to the extent they can control it and it's not impacted by world events, if you will. On the electricity side, the province introduced a very rigorous energy efficiency framework. Some of the results produced by Efficiency Nova Scotia under this framework are best in class. The framework itself is very unique in that it is based on an efficiency-first principle, in that the utility, Nova Scotia Power, needs to look at purchasing energy efficiency or demand-side management before making higher cost investments in generation. This framework has literally avoided billions of dollars in electricity costs that are not included in rates. It's hard to predict at any one point in time what rates would be, but I can say with some degree of confidence that electricity rates are not as high as they otherwise would have been without the results of energy efficiency and the framework that was put in place in legislation. It's a very important part of keeping prices under control. Second area I'll point to is around more short-term immediate relief for Nova Scotians. And so some of the initiatives that are currently in place to support Nova Scotians, the 1% reduction in HST broadly, the elimination of the provincial portion of HST on energy bills does provide relief. The heating assistance rebate program, the Your Energy rebate initiative, which is linked to the provincial portion of HST, do provide some immediate relief for Nova Scotians. Additionally, there are broader affordability measures. I think it's important not just to consider energy in isolation of other affordability constraints that have been put in place. So I mentioned the 1% reduction in HST. I mentioned, or I didn't mention in my opening remarks, but I'll mention it now, the reduction, the indexing of personal income taxes, particularly the basic personal amount, does help on affordability. School lunch programs. There's several initiatives that have been put in place to help with affordability. So maybe I'll pause there, Chair.
I recognize the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you. So I'll try to get at this another way. I appreciate the answer, but I mean, I would say it is worth noting that the heating assistance rebate program was cut back, as I think another panelist did make clear, at a time when prices are rising. And I also want to reiterate something that we raised when we discovered it, which is that the Your Energy rebate program, which was brought in a long time ago, a long time before this government, in fact, the provision in the Energy Act that ensures that rebate, that HST rebate on energy remained in absence of a referendum was quietly repealed by this government. And so where that Your Energy rebate program was guaranteed, it is no longer guaranteed. And I think that's really worth pointing out when we're talking about broader efficiency measures, because I think most Nova Scotians would agree that, you know, our heat shouldn't be taxed. It's an essential service, and this government has paved the way for themselves to tax it if they see necessary, and I think that's concerning. But I want to get back to the Energy Poverty Task Force and the Clean Electricity Solutions Task Force. So the recommendation, as I understand it, was that we create a Made in Nova Scotia version of the Ontario program, that it was identified that the Ontario program, and I think Mr. Colton designed that program, someone mentioned, that was sort of looked like something that would be the most effective here. My understanding was that government, that's been sitting on the desk of successive energy ministers for a couple of years now. And the idea was that would be reviewed and that there would be a decision made as to how we could, if and how we could design that program. Can you update the committee on the status of that work?
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Yeah, thank you. I do know that the department has taken a look at the program in terms of its applicability to Nova Scotia, comparison to supports that are already in place that fit the 4 recommendations of the Universal Service Program in place. So bill affordability, arrears management, crisis intervention, and energy efficiency programs. Admittedly, I don't have today a current update in terms of the status of whether or not further action will be taken. I do feel relatively confident in saying that there is a broad suite of initiatives in place to help with bill affordability, both in the short term and long term. In addition to my previous answer, I talked about some of the more immediate relief that's available for Nova Scotians. I do think it's important to mention some of the longer term efforts that are in place to stabilize energy prices in the province. And I'm largely speaking about electricity, but that's also within the context of significant fuel switching from oil to electricity as well. And so a little bit more of a focus on electricity. And that's primarily the development of the Clean Power Plan, which is a plan that's been put in place to hit the legislative target of 80% renewables by 2030. The development of the Clean Power Plan, which does rely significantly on local wind resources, some solar, some imported hydro, is based on renewable energy, which provides stable and predictable prices over time. That's very good for consumers to be able to make decisions, but also some of the more recent wind procurements, which have been added to the system, are at very, very competitive prices. In fact, when we compare some of those procurements to the price of wind in other provinces, it's some of the lowest in Canada. So the program has been very successful at adding wind at a very competitive price. It's extremely important to making sure Nova Scotians have access to stable, predictable, long-term, secure energy prices that they can rely on, but they're also local and clean.
I recognize the Leader of the Official Opposition.
I appreciate that, and I'm going to ask some other folks questions, but I guess I would say I think what I was hoping for today was an update on implementing that plan and designing that plan and what it would look like, and so we'll continue to ask that question until that happens. And I think significantly around, we are very aware of the wind development and supportive of it. We know it's the lowest cost energy, but when it comes to the constituents that we talk to every day and the choices that they're making, which some of your fellow panel members mentioned around medicine and food and heat, government has the unique capacity to be able to address those real-time needs. And we believe that there's more that must be done. But I want to turn to the Affordable Energy Coalition. Mr. Gifford, I'm curious to know what conversations you have had the opportunity to have around this report with the Department of Energy or with government in general in terms of, are you hopeful for progress on this report? Are you engaging with government in a meaningful way around designing and implementing a program?
I recognize Mr. Gifford.
Thank you. When the report was published in May of 2024, just before we had a open meeting to introduce it to the public, we met with the Deputy Minister of Energy at the time, Karen Gaetjen, and she assured us that they would look at it seriously. She was aware of the Clean Electricity Solutions Task Force recommendation, and she said that they would definitely take a good look at it and likely act on it. It was the impression we had. We have, since the minister changed and Trevor Boudreau became the minister, we have met with him about the report, and he was very interested in asking questions and was curious about how it would work and that kind of thing, so that was a hopeful sign. But there has been no definite interest expressed in actually going ahead. I did hear at some press conference somewhere a one-liner from the Premier, I believe, saying that they weren't going to go ahead with the proposal, but we haven't heard anything official, and we would welcome further conversations and would like to, keep it on the table and help make it a reality someday.
I recognize the leader of the official opposition.
Have you had the opportunity to meet with the Premier in his capacity as Minister of Energy?
No. No. Oh, excuse me. Order. I recognize Mr. Gifford.
Thank you. No, in fact, we haven't tried since he became Energy Minister, but that would be a good idea. Thank you.
I recognize MLA Chender.
Thank you. I have a few questions now for Nova Scotia Power, and Mr. Lanteigne is always a good sport. We'll see where we get. Last June, Mr. Gregg, the then president of NSP, told a similar committee to this that he anticipated that the insurance would cover the costs of the recent cyber breach. And of course, this is directly relevant to rates because if not the insurance, then ratepayers. And now, less than a year later, we've seen that the Energy Board has been asked for permission to charge ratepayers up to $91 million for cybersecurity and custom information upgrades. I think which in our reading still feels like the fallout of the breach. Can you speak to why customers are being asked to cover those costs?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you for the question and perhaps the acknowledgement at the start of it as well. I think from my perspective, speaking to what's in front of was in front of the ACE hearing for Nova Scotia Power, I won't get into all the details on that, but I can specifically speak to the customer information system. In this committee in November, as well as the June committee, items came up where members from the table asked questions about some of the limitations with the customer information system, and we talked about what we were doing to support customers. One of the pieces that I'm not sure if we said in that committee, but we have said in the past, even prior to the cyber incident happening, is that customer information system was something that Nova Scotia was planning to modernize and replace. So the timing of the hearing, it is coincidental. That is actually something that we do want to replace because it's in the best interest of our customers. It'll help us modernize our billing system, and we feel that it's beneficial. So it is not related to the cyber incident through those hearings.
I recognize MLA Chender.
Okay. I'm not sure that most, that most folks might. I mean, I understand your explanation, but I still think, most people might have expected that such a system would have already been in place, and now what may be expediting that. It feels connected, but I take your explanation. But the reality is that Nova Scotians are still dealing with the fallout of the data breach and the overbilling that followed. And notwithstanding, public information around whether or not people needed to keep up, it was very onerous for many Nova Scotians who receive a bill and immediately pay it because they feel like that's what they need to do and that's what they've always done. So the rate hike has been approved, but it hasn't come into force. And so the other piece that people are very concerned to us and reaching out to us about is the request of the company to prorate bills based on the kind of new rate and to estimate rather than make sure that Nova Scotians are actually just being charged for the actual amount of energy they were using. Can you tell the committee how the company is going to make sure that customers aren't overbilled and are only billed for the energy that they actually use?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you for the question, and I do agree with all of those concerns, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it. So the specific questions that, you're right, the general rate application is still with the Nova Scotia Energy Board right now. And the specific questions that the Energy Board did ask us about is when we actually make a rate change. So how we would actually apply that energy to bills. So a couple of components happen. So the proration essentially applies energy at the old rate for the period of time, the amount of days that's in the old rate, and the same thing, the period of days that's in the new rate. Important to note that the base charge, there's no variable usage. So that base charge, when it's actually prorated, it is the exact right way to do it. For the usage of energy that crosses bills, that would be the main concern that I believe you're asking about, just to clarify. We follow an industry standard approach of actually prorating the amount, as described and as we've been talking about with the Energy Board right now. When we actually look at that methodology of completing it, again, it's something that we know other utilities across Canada do, to apply the change of a rate to the energy bill. And from a customer perspective, the variability between the rate of usage, at this point of year, it's not peak winter season, so the rate change wouldn't take effect probably until May. The board decision is still pending. I think that's kind of the main issue that you're talking about. In terms of general concerns around billing, I think it is important to note that when we were in here in November, we had actually talked about how our meters would be reconnected to the system by the end of March. So that did happen. The estimation of customer bills that had been a concern last year from July to December, it was about 50-50. In January, with the system connection coming back and being reestablished fully, we were up to about 85%. February was 92%, March was 95%, and this month we're back into that normal operating range where less than 2% of customer bills are estimated. So that part of the experience has returned to normal, where the bills that are arriving for customers do reflect the actual usage that has been consumed at their home or business.
I recognize the MLA MLA Chender with 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Okay, well, I want to thank you, and I guess I'll just ask you a quick one, which is, has you, I believe, were on the Energy Poverty Task Force as well, or the company was represented in those conversations. Has anyone from the company met with the Premier to discuss moving forward on that since he became Energy Minister?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
I do not believe so, no.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone for being here. It's actually somewhat rare to have so many experts, particularly on efficiency, so I appreciate that in the discussion around trying to focus on reducing bills. And I know we have this task force that explicitly recommended the reduction of bills for low-income folks. So maybe we can just try to put a finer point from the government perspective. So potentially the deputy would answer this, but is the government now in a position that they have decided that they will not be moving forward with a specific program to target a lower bill for those that are under the energy poverty line and focus instead on the existing suite of programs that were referenced, so the HARP program, the home warming program?
I recognize Deputy MacDonald.
Thank you. To my knowledge, the department has not been given that direction. I do think it's important to point out that in addition to the examples you gave of focusing on bills for reductions, the investments that have been made in energy efficiency to date, which do result in immediate and long-term bill reductions, both through the legislative policy framework that government oversees for energy efficiency in the electricity sector or demand-side management, but also the investments made in reducing oil usage in the province, $250 million since 2022, leveraged another $300 million from the federal government, and those programs continue.
I recognize Honourable MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. The answer that we routinely get about cost of living, even with power bills, is that HST has been reduced, and we all know that HST is not even a consideration with the year program that's been on for a long time now. And but I do want to ask about the direction efficiencies taking now with less programs. Year after year we hear of programs being removed. But Deputy mentioned, I think it goes back to 2022 where there was a lump sum fund, 140 some million, that would take us to 2026. So I think it was a 3 or 4 year program. So is that program basically being dried out? Is there considerations to extending any efficiency programs? Because we all agree that that's the lowest cost of way of bringing power bills down. what happens with the programs moving forward when we see like the end of the solar program, and what is the cash flow looking like for efficiency now that those lump sum initiatives that the government brought in is now frankly over? And maybe you can just give me some numbers on how many heat pumps were actually delivered with that those lump sum funding.
I recognize Ms. Casey.
Thank you. I'm going to have to come back to you on the specific numbers of heat pumps installed, but I will say that the programs themselves, we continue to deliver our sort of marquee programs that serve renters, low and moderate income Nova Scotians. So there continues to be something for everybody. And in terms of programs, sort of the programs winding down and investments in new programs, that's really driven by demand that we're seeing in the market and the feedback that we're getting from Nova Scotians. So it's certainly not, it's not a product of sort of running out of money. It really reflects the demand. We continue to be in a very strong position and are working carefully with partners to ensure that our programming continues.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity on demand, because I know when the solar rebate was pulled away, there was a deadline given to customers to actually apply. Hundreds of customers met that deadline and then were told they were all on a wait list, so they were basically removed from being able to get that rebate that was committed to them. That's one example. So is it that demand becomes so strong that they coil back, or is it the other way around, that if there's strong demand, then you want to increase the program? So I guess just clarity around that. And we continue to hear that it takes several months for those to get rebates, and just wondering if you have any metrics that you try to achieve for folks that are upfront putting the money forward and then waiting for their checks in the mail.
I recognize Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to defer to my colleague, Rob Burns, to respond to the question regarding metrics.
I'm recognizing Mr. Burns at the same mic. Oh, no, at the mic to the left.
Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, the question is related to a specific program or overall our portfolio in general. So there's a number of different program offerings that would have different timelines associated with them, depending on if they're customer directed, i.e. the customer handles the customer would handle the I guess the project management component of it. The general timelines for something like the HEA, for instance, the general timeline from when somebody submits it, they have 1 year in order to finish the work, and then the rebate would be processed. Those rebates typically will take 90 days. So the vast majority of the rebates processed for HEA, for instance, when we receive is within that 90 days. We have metrics, we track it. And there are some instances where they may extend to beyond that due to things like missing paperwork or that type of thing. But for the most part, we are well on track with our 90-day service standard for that specific program. And those are the ones where the customer would actually pay up front and then be reimbursed through the program.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in terms of your actual programs, do you have more programs today or less programs than, say, 2 or 3 years ago? What direction are we going in?
I recognize Ms. Casey.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We're actually trying to consolidate some of our programs. So under, in terms of program titles and names, we have likely fewer. However, we're trying to make it easier for customers to navigate. Some of the feedback we've had in the past is that it's very difficult to know what customers qualify for. So this has been a deliberate effort on our part to ensure that customers actually know what they're entitled to.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Rankin with 228.
Yeah, no, I know, limited time. I just think efficiency has huge opportunities here, and, you know, we were a leader. We did slip in the rankings that came out, and I know that's because some provinces caught up to some of the initiatives we have, but when you look at the different states that are looking at this, there's about 10 different states in the United States that do things like compete directly with generation and procurement and things like that, and have specific targets in mind. We don't have a target for demand side, which I think would be positive. So, and I think sometimes it's a challenge when government has lump sum funding that they give and say, just put it in this program, and we don't have dependable funding year over year. And so, what else is the department looking at? Will efficiency and conservation be at least considered in the government's like IRP planning process to ensure that we're maximizing the demand side? Because we know it is the cheapest way that we can actually help bring power bills down for everyone.
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Thank you. So integrated resource planning is now conducted by the new Independent Energy System Operator, the ISO, an independent nonprofit organization that was created to do system procurement, if you will, to do it in a fair manner in the best interest of ratepayers. One of the legislative changes that came with the implementation of the IESO and giving the responsibility for long-term planning to the IESO was to give efficiency a seat at the table in that planning exercise. In the past, in terms of past IRP processes, I guess I'm speaking with my past hat on a little bit here, if that's okay. It was always a bit of a challenge to get efficiency recognized as a key resource in that long-term planning. Part of the legislative changes that came with the creation of the ISO was actually, to use my phrasing, give efficiency a seat at the table. And so, for example, Efficiency 1 is legislatively required to cooperate with the ISO in developing...
Order. I apologize, but time for the Liberal Party has expired. We'll now move on to the PC Party, and I will begin with MLA McGilvery.
Thank you. I can give Mr. MacDonald a chance to finish that answer if you would like.
I recognize Deputy Mr. MacDonald.
Thank you. The point I was expanding on is the recent, somewhat recent changes to create the Independent Electricity System Operator legislatively gave efficiency or demand-side management a seat at the table in long-term integrated resource planning for our electricity system. This is hugely important because energy efficiency has consistently been demonstrated to provide a very low-cost alternative to investing in higher sources of generation, transmission, distribution, and should be viewed as a first resource for electricity ratepayers. And so these changes, which legislatively require Efficiency 1 to cooperate with the ISO, are very significant. In addition, there's a concept in electricity planning called avoided costs. And so you invest in energy efficiency, reduce the demand, you don't need as much generation assets that are paid for by all ratepayers. And so those avoided costs through energy efficiency, Efficiency 1 is now legislatively required to participate and cooperate in development and identification of those avoided costs. We realize this is fairly technical and in the weeds, but it is very significant from a planning perspective, back to the MLA's question. So, yeah.
I recognize MLA McGilvery.
Thank you for that explanation, Deputy Minister. My questions will be for Nova Scotia Power and Mr. Lanteigne. So picking up from the last time you were here, we talked about miscalculated power bills. Have these issues been rectified, and have all the affected Nova Scotians been paid back or credited?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you very much for the question. And yes, I recall we had a good conversation about that in November, and we also had submitted responses in writing to this committee on January the 31st. So I think the specific issues that we've been talking about on November 25th were related to the seasonal shift in bills that did see some bills increase on the estimated front at the beginning of November. Our approach to actually deal with customers that were in those situations were, there was a couple of things that we'd actually done. Before we actually came into committee, we had launched a tool on our website that allowed customers who had estimated bills to take a photo of their meter if they wished to use it. Emily Rankin brought up a great point that it's not the customer's job to do that, but we wanted to give customers more options so that they could actually get the true reading. So fully acknowledge the question and the point that had come up in November, but that was important for us just to provide customers with those options. The other piece that we did for customers who were in that situation is we did proactively reach out to customers who we felt that the estimate could have been high, so that they were aware of this option. We received over 3,000 submissions, not just from those customers, but from all customers who wanted to take advantage of that additional option that we did provide them. As bills began to arrive in January, for customers who we bill every 2 months for most customers, so any bill who had that higher bill when it arrived in January, true readings on those bills would have trued it up. Most of those customers actually did get true readings as the meter reconnection had started. And we again promoted to customers who got continued estimates that they could actually reach out to us and get a reading on the bill through a photo. Again, I think it's just important to note we're in a much different spot than we were back in November. It was just shy of a month after the committee meeting in November. It was December the 23rd, where the first bill was issued with meter data on it. And again, by March the 31st, the meter reconnection was restored. So for the customers who are affected, again, everyone has gone through the process. Many are now getting their second true read after this meter connection has come into place, and those bills would have been caught up and reconciled. The other piece we commented on in our January report is that for any customer who had felt that they were paid, we did offer the opportunity for refunds. And while there were 2,000 refunds in Q4 of last year, that's actually less than it was the year before and less than it was even the year before that. It was about 2,300, 2,400 the 2 years preceding that. And I think for us, one of the normal things that happens is sometimes, well, first of all, there are customers who sometimes do just overpay. They like to actually have a credit on their bill. There are also situations where customers might, if they're going through their bank, they might misplace a decimal point and they've overpaid, so they'll actually call us for refunds. So it's not, we don't have the ability to specifically put it back to that issue, but it is part of our process to make sure customers were aware of the options that they had available for them. And I can expand on that more, but maybe I'll pass it back if that answers the specific question.
I recognize MLA McGilvery.
Thank you, Chair. That sounded like a fulsome answer. Also, as a follow-up to last November's meeting, a colleague of mine, MLA Dave Bowlby, raised the issue about the quite upsetting news that the Long Lake fires had received power bills and their houses were burnt down, basically. Have these occurrences been rectified?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
I actually had the opportunity to speak with MLA Bowlby right after the committee meeting because that was a concern to me as well. And I also had a chance to meet with him in his riding. I have not actually received the specific customer information to follow up directly, but what I can say is that any customers whose home was affected by a fire, both in the 2023 fires that affected the Barrington area and Tantallon, and also in the fires that occurred last year, our approach was to make sure that we weren't replicating that exact experience that you described. So if one did get a bill, it's very regrettable. It's something that we would not have wanted to happen. And if we hear of any situation like this, we'll definitely follow up with those customers directly.
I recognize MLA McGilvery.
Okay, and lastly for me for now will be, what measures can Nova Scotia Power take to lower people's power bills?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thanks. I don't want to repeat everything that was talked about in the GRA hearing in January, and also, again, that matter is still in front of the Energy Board. But I think from our perspective, like first I want to acknowledge like the opening comments and some of the answers to the questions from all of the witnesses here today. That means a lot to us too, understanding that the cost of everything in Nova Scotia has increased. And yes, electricity prices have also risen as well. I think our approach when we're working through the regulated process of filing a general aid application to the Energy Board, it does ensure that we're keeping rates at the lowest possible amount to charge customers. And from our perspective, with individual customers, we really want to work with them to ensure we're doing everything we can do to support them. So going back to the situation where we do know, the billing experience with us over the last year, the discussion in November, some of the questions this morning, we know that it was not ideal. We do regret that. But we also recognize that in some circumstances, customers, they owe us balances right now. So our big focus is on helping those customers find a path to pay off those balances. So we're still not charging late charges. We're still not charging interest on balances that customers have. Again, we have not disconnected any customers from not being able to pay their bill since the incident was detected last April. And our big focus now is going to be on making sure customers understand we're going to allow them to, if they have accumulated a balance, to spread those payments out and continue with an interest-free approach to be able to manage any bills that have accumulated over the course of the past year.
I recognize MLA Burns.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you. So my question's for Nova Scotia Power. We've been about a year from the cyber breach. Nova Scotia Power has been playing catch up in kind of addressing the problems that they've experienced in the cyberspace. We hear questions about upgrades to new systems. What can you tell Nova Scotians to reassure them that something like that can't happen again? The system has been rebuilt to a capacity that's more resilient today than it was when this problem happened a year ago.
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you for the question, Emily Burns. I actually believe we met the first time, it was about a week or two after it happened at a community event in your neighborhood. And so a couple of things, and I believe you have a background in IT as well. The cyber events, the frequency of them, you will know, and everyone knows that it's been occurring a lot more. You almost can't go through the news every day even without finding a new issue that's happening. Nova Scotia Power did invest in cybersecurity prior to this incident occurring last year. And of course, we're continuing to invest on it. As we have rebuilt the systems that were affected from last year's incident, we're always making sure that cybersecurity is at the forefront. We've also, as part of the recovery from the cybersecurity incident, it was working with, leading consultants outside of Nova Scotia Power to help ensure that we were making decisions that would be keeping cybersecurity as a top priority. So again, I think, the worry for any organization is that these attacks are very real, but it is definitely a focus of us, and we understand how important it is to protect our customers' data.
Recognize MLA Burns.
Thank you, and I do think that's reassuring to hear that that's being addressed, that you've had consultants in looking at it. When we look back at the process and the struggle that Nova Scotia Power experienced when this did happen a year ago, and the things that have been done to address it, such as what you described, if an incident were to happen again, how would Nova Scotia Power react differently and respond differently to make the experience better on Nova Scotians?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
It's a great question, and I think maybe what I'll talk about is the feedback of actually a lot of people in this room that's even helped inform how we've adjusted our approach as we've worked through this incident. So, my colleagues who I've worked with on the Energy Poverty Task Force at this table, as we've gone through this, we've met with the Affordable Energy Coalition, for example, to get their guidance on how we're actually doing things. The feedback from this committee in November helped inform some of the changes that we're going to make, and it's really just about getting the message out there more. Because when we talked in the committee, one of the themes that came out of November is that we had answers for some of the challenges that were happening, but the feedback we heard from this group is that we weren't getting the message out there a lot. So after the committee was over, after conversations with Mr. Benjamin and others from the Affordable Energy Coalition, we did a couple of things. We started increasing advertising on explanations of what was happening and what customers could do about it. And we didn't just use channels like social media. We actually made sure that that information was out on radio, connected television, to try to get the word out there. I think directly from the meeting here, we had talked about community sessions we had done to help support people with signing up for credit monitoring. And the feedback that came from this meeting was really, that was a good idea to do more of that. So we've had 8 sessions across the province so far. And we're going to continue to do that, to get out and talk to people more. So from a learning perspective, there's obviously still more work to do to kind of recover it. But as we've been going along, we've been trying to realize the current state we're in, taking feedback from important relationships that we have, including many in this room again, to adjust our approach to make sure that we're helping our customers as best we can.
I recognize MLA Burns.
Thank you. And you're right, we did meet at a community meeting, and thank you for that. Thank you for coming out and doing that. And I did want to ask a follow-up question to that. So while you're out in Hammonds Plains, Lucasville, you shared a community infrastructure project about the work that was happening in the area and the long-term plan for kind of stabilizing the system in that area. Can you help me reconcile when we see power outages in our area and we see communities in the dark due to natural events, weather, inclement events, how that project, that work, and that resiliency that you're trying to put into the system still leaves customers kind of in a situation where they're checking online to see when their power may be coming back?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you very much for the question. And reliability, I know, is a critical piece for our customers, right? So we're here today and we're talking about the specifics on energy pricing and affordability for customers, but reliability is also a very important topic. It's really the anchor of our recent general rate application was the investment that we're making into reliability. We understand that it's really important for customers to be connected. So in the Hammonds Plains area and across the province, we have a 5-year reliability plan that is spending $1.3 billion, including really doubling the vegetation management, the tree trimming, if you will, budget that we had just a few years ago, because trees contacting lines is the #1 reason for power outages. So again, we know that outages still do happen. We understand how impactful they are, but it's definitely a huge priority for Nova Scotia Power to make sure that we're improving the reliability performance so that customers are experiencing better results in that area.
Thank you. I'll pass it along to my colleagues.
I recognize MLA Vreede.
Various versions. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to hear that we're talking about reliability because there's one form of it which is important, affordability, but reliability is very critical. I know yesterday there was, an outage, power outage, and there were a lot of upset residents, in Clay Park West reaching out to the office. One actually wrote to me and was really upset because he had like an appointment at Nova Scotia Health, and he's been on an appointment waiting for months, and because of that, it becomes a missed opportunity, which, we don't know how that will be rescheduled and all that. So reliability is very key. So I think it's important for us to understand that when we talk about affordability, that we also have to, to remember that it's not just something being affordable, but it has to be something that people can rely on, because people travel, different kilometers across Nova Scotia for various appointments, but people were really, really upset yesterday because we got lots and lots of calls about that, and I think the reason that was given was not really very tenable for many persons, right? Regarding it being a crowd was the reason why there was an outage. So I'm just a bit concerned about that. I think it's something that we need to, think about. How do we ensure that we have a system that people can actually rely on? Because sometimes it's about life and death situation also. My question basically I want to ask right now is, where is Nova Scotia Power presently sourcing their natural gas, for some of your facilities? Because we've heard that natural gas is one of those needs that you have. I'm just curious where you're presently sourcing from, and how does that factor in terms of reliability and also in terms of cost?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Appreciate the question. Just a couple of things there. Obviously, fully understand the scenario of the customer that you spoke to and missed an appointment, and that is why we're focused on reliability. And unfortunately, wildlife interference, yesterday it was a crow, for the one you're talking about, that does impact things. The one thing that I do want to say is a couple parts to the answer on the natural gas procurement. The first thing what I will say is that the focus of Nova Scotia Power in obtaining fuel for generation and any other purpose is to make sure that we're doing it at the lowest cost possible to all of our ratepayers. However, I'm not an expert in the space of specifically where the procurement is coming from. So if we could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to take that piece away and we can get back to the committee on that.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Vreede.
So I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer the second question because I'm just curious around transportation cost of this energy itself. That do you think if this, I want to believe that this natural gas is not presently sourced from Nova Scotia, probably be some outside of Nova Scotia. Do you think we potentially can save on transportation cost if this energy is sourced from within Nova Scotia? I'm just wondering if you're able to answer that.
Recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
I appreciate the question. I don't think that I could provide a full answer on it. Obviously, if transportation of something didn't have to go nearly as far, that's beneficial, but it would be another question that we'd need to understand the full picture of before we could provide an appropriate response for this committee.
I recognize MLA Fidere.
Thank you for your honest answer. I just would like to move over to the department. We've heard pretty loud and clear that the Premier and the Minister for Energy of this particular department is not pleased with the power rate hike, right? That was been approved by the Energy Board. What steps did your department take to be heard in this process and to advocate for Nova Scotia? Because one of these that we're hearing everywhere, I'm sure that we all are feeling it also, is regarding the cost. So what are the steps in terms of advocating, that you've taken to advocate for Nova Scotians with the Energy Board that you could share with us today?
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you for the question. There's several steps that the province took with respect to the most recent general rate application I think you're referring to. And the most significant of those would be the intervention, registering as an intervener in the regulatory process. And the Premier, as Energy Minister, submitted, I think, strong and compelling closing remarks, making it clear his lack of support for the rate increase or any rate increase at a time when Nova Scotians are facing a lot of challenges broadly with respect to affordability. There were a number of, I'll say, technical points in the submission itself, which the province contested. I think there's a few that I'd like to point out, and so one is a higher level of scrutiny on the operating expenses of Nova Scotia Power. I think in the interim decision, or preliminary decision, I should say, by the Energy Board, they also highlighted some pullbacks on operating expenses and executive salaries and whatnot. Moving away from the most recent general rate application, there are several other initiatives that the province has undertaken with respect to ensuring that electricity rates, the increase in electricity rates is as low as possible. And I've mentioned a few of those in some of my other remarks earlier today, but a couple that I'd like to highlight. And those relate to leveraging the power of the province's balance sheet to help Nova Scotians. And so, for example, the province did a debt buyback of $117 million of fuel costs, which lowers the amount that needs to be recovered from Nova Scotians. And I understand this predated my time, but I understand the province worked really, really hard to convince the federal government to put forward a $500 million loan guarantee. There are estimates of how much that has alleviated pressure on rates, upwards of, I think, 19% are some of the estimates, so very significant. Of course, future actions leveraging the balance sheet of the province would need to be dependent on, some of the other fiscal pressures the province is facing. But, those are a few examples of interventions by the province.
I recognize MLA Robichaud.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Minister MacDonald. You actually answered my first question, so that's good. But I will continue with questions for the Department of Energy. So, Deputy Minister, we have new energy coming onto the grid quickly. So how can Nova Scotians know that the path being taken will be affordable, as well as being in their best interest?
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Thank you. I've talked about this a little bit in my responses today, but one of the key actions that the province has taken was to separate from Nova Scotia Power the management of the grid and the procurement of new energy resources. Our electricity system is undergoing a fundamental change, and that's driven by the legislative requirement to achieve 80% of our electricity to be generated from renewable sources by 2030. The province produced a document called the Clean Power Plan, which sets forward the pathway to achieving that 80% renewable generation by 2030. And so that pathway includes the integration of local development and integration of local wind sources. It also includes several initiatives related to grid stability and reliability, which I think has come up a couple of times in some of the questions. So things like the development of grid-scale battery storage. Nova Scotia Power has announced 150 megawatts of grid-scale battery storage. I believe 2 of the sites are in operation, and I think the third will be coming online in 2026. Through that Clean Power Plan, there's an ambition to procure an additional 150 megawatts of grid-scale battery, again, to help stabilize the grid, help manage with peak demand in times when renewables may not be optimal, if you will. Those decisions going forward will be made by an independent nonprofit organization, the IESO, as I mentioned. I think that is a very fundamental part of how the management of the system is done going forward. A couple other points I'll just mention very quickly, and that is the element of competition, the introduction of the element of competition in our electricity system. There was a recent announcement, thank you, which introduces direct competition for customers to Nova Scotia Power. That is a really important development in our electricity system. And the other program is the Green Choice Program, which allows industrial facilities to identify and potentially take on their own sources of renewable energy. Again, that element of competition and choice for consumers we think is very, very important to making sure that the price that Nova Scotians pay for clean, reliable electricity is as fair and reasonable as possible.
I recognize MLA Robichaud with 5 minutes, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Minister. I think you see my questions because you're answering them quite quickly. That's good. We've learned the hard way this year again that the fluctuating price of fossil fuels can impact affordability in a big way. What steps is your department taking to provide made in Nova Scotia energy solutions that aren't at the mercy of global market?
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Thank you. A theme that many jurisdictions around the world are focusing on, particularly in these turbulent times, is energy security and the development of local energy resources to provide that energy security. Nova Scotia is blessed with an abundance of both renewable and non-renewable energy sources. I think one of the previous questions had to do with where natural gas from Nova Scotia Power is procured. All natural gas that's used in the province comes from outside the province. We pay some of the highest rates for natural gas of any province in Canada, and I would dare say anywhere is in North America. We have natural gas resource, both onshore, offshore. There's various initiatives that the department, spearheaded by the Premier as Minister, are initiating. And so a study by Dalhousie University to examine the opportunities for onshore natural gas. The province and the federal government through their joint regulator, the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board, excuse me if I missed the last part of that, have issued a call for bids for exploration. And of course, a really significant, in my opinion, nation-building project, and a project that the federal government has deemed of national significance, the development of offshore wind, or as it's commonly known, Wind West. Nova Scotia is blessed with some of the greatest, best offshore wind in anywhere in the world. It's a very consistent wind. It's at a high capacity factor, so it blows a lot, and it blows very consistently. You can make decisions on that. There are some estimates of the resource potential of offshore wind as much as powering 25% or meeting 25% of all of Canada's energy needs. It's a significant economic development opportunity for the province, but it is a renewable energy resource that we can export and take advantage of the many economic opportunities associated with it.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Rochot.
Thank you, Chair. I live near the ocean in St. Mary's Bay. I can attest that there's plenty of wind for future projects. I'm going to change my questioning to the Department of Opportunities and Social Development. Energy affordability is one of the many pressures families face. How does OSD balance immediate crisis response with long-term stability? And what are you doing to address the problem in the long term and not just responding to the short-term crisis?
I recognize Mr. Egerton.
Thank you very much for your question. So I think the department always has to balance between the immediate needs of clients and participants and long-term planning to afford them stability in their income and ultimately to break the cycle of poverty that brings many people to interact with the department. So some of the more significant long-term and structural changes have been 4 increases in the amount of income assistance, in the income assistance rates since the start of 2024. I would suggest perhaps most significantly to tie them to the rate of inflation, which affords people an understanding in advance as to when and by how much their income assistance rates will go up and allow them to plan accordingly. There was the introduction of the disability support supplement. So that is for income assistant clients who have a disability. So that was introduced a couple of years ago at the rate of $300. It's now $324 per month because it's also linked to CPI. We have a cohort of just shy of 6,000 participants in the disability support program. That is an income tested program, so these are folks who would feel substantively feel the pinch of power rates as well as the ability to afford the basic needs. We have seen a increase in the funding to the disability support program over the last 5 years. It's now an $800 million program, so it's larger than many departments. We've seen shifts in programs like the Nova Scotia Child Benefit.
Order. We've reached the end of the time allowed for the PC. We will now move on to the second round of questioning with 6 minutes for each opposition party and 12 minutes for the government side. So I recognize the Honourable MLA LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to, I don't have much time, so I just want to go back to talking about the Energy Poverty Task Force report for a moment. So I've heard a number of questions that do frankly boil my blood because we know in this room, we all know, and we've talked about it several times, that this government is capable and responsible for regulating Nova Scotia Power. And so given that information, or given that reminder, and also going back to the Poverty Task Force report, I want to ask Mr. Benjamin, so last year you said something similar, Mr. Benjamin, you said the Houston government has done nothing to address the situation despite a program recommended by the Energy Poverty Task Force. And while people are understandably angry with Nova Scotia Power, we also need to expect solutions from our government. So what solutions should this government be putting in place immediately? And I'd like you also, if you have a minute in this 6 minutes, to talk specifically about the particular situation for people who are renting homes or apartments. Thank you.
I recognize Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Yeah, the solutions in the report, A Way Forward. It's called the Home Energy Assistance Program. It's what I laid out in my opening remark. It's a 4-pronged program: on-bill relief, arrears management and forgiveness, emergency intervention for when there's a real tough temporary situation in a household and ramped up energy efficiency programs. And the key being that if you sign on, if a household signs on to any one of these, they automatically get looped into all of them. And one quick point is that government does have flexibility on how this rolls out, obviously, but those are the 4 components that we think really would pull thousands, like about almost 30,000 households out of energy poverty.
I recognize MLA LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin, and I do take your point from your opening remarks too about that $50 million versus the 30 million going into the research on fracking. It is makes it kind of very digestible information when you put it in that way. So given what we've heard from Mr. Benjamin, Deputy MacDonald, I would like to ask you, well, you know already, and because we've heard from so many people, that trust between Nova Scotia Power and the people of the province is broken. People are spending more than 30% more on their energy bills compared to the average Canadian for fairly unreliable service. And since the data breach last spring, Nova Scotians still don't know if their power bill is actually based on the amount of energy they've used. So my question to you, in your very new role, is, as I've said, and we know, the government regulates this company and should do everything possible to ensure Nova Scotians get better services. And I appreciate the Premier's remarks in the intervention as an intervener in the rate application, but to the end that the government can do more than simply intervene in words. What work has the Minister of Energy done thus far to launch a much-needed full review of Nova Scotia Power?
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
I think I'll start by saying I'm not entirely sure how much work has been done in that full review piece yet, and so maybe I have to get up to speed on that. So, just full disclosure, I do think it's important to note that you're correct. There are a number of things the province can do around both influencing Nova Scotia Power and how it conducts itself, but also from a legislative policy perspective. One of the more significant things, I think, was the increase in fines or penalties to Nova Scotia Power for lack of performance, and increasing the amount the Energy Board can fine Nova Scotia Power from $1 million to $25 million. That's significant, and that should be a significant motivator to improve reliability and performance. But we know that in and of itself won't do it all. The province, like many jurisdictions, has an independent energy regulator. Part of the legislative changes I've mentioned earlier to create the independent electricity system operator also had an additional component, was to restructure the Utility Review Board and to create a separate standalone energy board focused on the oversight and regulation of energy in the province. That again, from my perspective, is a very significant development. In a previous life, I spent time on a national task force looking at what Canada needs to do to build out its electricity grids to achieve net zero by 2050. One of the common themes around that table, and the table was represented by, utilities across Canada, not-for-profit organizations. I was the energy efficiency person on the committee, if you will. But a consistent theme was empowering regulators to be able to make decisions and hold utilities to account. And the creation of the Energy Board itself, I think, is a pretty significant step in that direction.
Order. I recognize the Honourable MLA Marquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go as quick as possible here because I got a couple of things I want to ask, but thanks everybody for being here. My first question is for Nova Scotia Power. This is a bill that we tabled in the legislature. In cases where Nova Scotia Power has overcharged customers on their power bills, will you pay them back with interest?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thanks for the question. I think from our perspective, we've been really working hard to get the billing system and the experience for customer billing back to normal. The main concerns that customers are calling us about right now, in fact, pretty much all the concerns are customers who were actually underestimated, may have underpaid, and also the seasonal usage on the bill is driving a large balance onto the bill. So from our perspective, now that we're getting back to the point where, again, this month, after the meter reconnection, all bills are in place, we're continuing to do an assessment on the accuracy of the estimated bills. I know we filed some information with this committee back in January, so our work is still ongoing, but that's not what's driving customer questions to our offices right now.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Marquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's something that we'll continue to pursue, but I don't have much time, so I'm going to jump right into why I wanted to be here today. We're here today to support and have a conversation around energy poverty and supporting Nova Scotians. And it's good to see you, Deputy MacDonald, and I commend you for the work that you did in efficiency. I had the privilege of being the minister of that department for over 3 years, and in those 3 years, we talked a lot about supporting low-income Nova Scotians. Over 11,000 low-income houses retrofitted, the best solar program in the country, programs to support Nova Scotians right across the board, and it's important for me because as we have these conversations and you hear the big narrative around oil and gas and offshore wind, things that are important, particularly offshore wind, where we're all supportive, but we still don't know how we're moving the power, and it's still years away. But what is not years away is efficiency programs. They are the ones, and there's a huge conference happening right now in Halifax, Greenbuilt, and these are the people those programs that we put in place years ago put hundreds and hundreds of people to work to help Nova Scotians reduce their power bills. And my fear is the government is pitting oil and gas, which I also lived when I watched 2 major companies seal their wells and leave and weren't coming back, and had a big conversation around community consultation and fracking and gas. And I feel like the government is forgetting that this efficiency world is really right now the place where we can help people save on their power bills and build the economy, and they're not talking about it at all. And I'm very happy that you're in the role now because you're a pro at this stuff. And you built a lot of these programs around the province. You built a lot of programs that help support low-income Nova Scotians, and I really hope that that is part of the direction. You have a wonderful staff behind you that are pros at this stuff. Efficiency One has been fantastic to work with, great leadership team there, right across the board. So I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but the fact of the matter is I have 6 minutes, and I think it's important to get this on the record, that there's a lot of energy conversation happening right now in the province. Some of it is very long out. Some of it has a lot of questions around public stakes and new infrastructure. But I really just wanted to reiterate, because I knew I only had a few minutes, if we're going to help Nova Scotians, it's inefficiency, period, right now. You can do it, build those programs, expand on those programs, and put people to work, particularly in rural Nova Scotia, where we saw a residential solar program go from like 15 companies to 70 in a year because we had the right incentives in place. There was great partnerships between the provincial and federal governments, and I'll leave it at that for now. I had to get that on the record because now you're in a role where you have so much expertise in it, and I'd like to give you the last minute to comment on some of my comments.
I recognize Deputy Minister MacDonald.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of remarks. First, I've seen no evidence of pitting efficiency with other resources in my time, either with efficiency or relatively short time with the department. And speaking specifically to the role of energy efficiency in the province, it is very significant. And both the industry that's been developed, and so my colleague from efficiency can correct me on the numbers, but I think there's something like 5,000 direct jobs in the province. And I recently read Efficiency One's annual report, and I think it's just out. Great document. Efficiency spending is at the highest level ever in terms of for 2025, and I expect for 2026 as well. So the amount of money flowing into efficiency from various sources is the highest it's ever been. And so I think that's an indication of the commitment to energy efficiency. I certainly understand I think can have a unique perspective on how efficiency can be balanced with some of the other resources we're trying to add to the electricity system in particular. So,
I recognize Honourable MLA Marquette.
Thank you, and this is a good conversation because they're like a lot. Money is drying up, and governments make decisions, and it's not just a decision at this level; it's also a decision at the federal level. We've had the same conversation. I've had the opportunity to sit with the minister, national minister, and express the same thing, that as we go towards these nation-building projects, which are important, which have opportunities for this province and beyond, while we're in that journey, these programs really put people to work.
Order.
In the world.
Order. Time's expired for the Liberal Party. I'll move to the PC and recognize MLA Rocho.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the Department of Opportunities and Social Development, I know that you were cut short during the last answer, so if you would want, we could finish that answer. It was around short-term and long-term solutions.
I recognize Executive Director Egerton.
Thank you. Second. Thank you very much for allowing me to continue on this one. I think I'll just focus on a couple of other programs and changes that the department has initiated to sort of reinforce the notion of its long-term planning and the importance of sustainably helping people meet their basic needs, and also breaking the generational issue we see with people in the department. So a couple of things I've talked about, IA and the DSP remedy. I would also point to programs like PATH, which is a program that provides kids who are leaving, youth who are leaving the former children in care. It gives them 6 years worth of payments and support to allow them to act as a sort of financial proxy that a parent might do, to allow them to integrate into the community of their choice, to pursue education, to buy the things that might set them up for life. And I think a very important element of what the department does is its work on homelessness. 5 years ago, we spent around $10 million on this. I appreciate that this is an issue that has emerged with a vengeance both in Nova Scotia but in the country as a whole. Our spending on that has gone up. I mean, the percentage is a little bit obsolete, but it's $165 million in the next budget. So there are real and concrete spendings and investments on behalf of the lowest income Nova Scotians. OSD is concerned with the 4% who in Nova Scotia who earn the least money. So when we're talking about energy poverty, it's impacting our 40,000 clients and participants, I would suggest more than anybody else. And there are real and substantive efforts to help those people immediately meet their basic needs, including the cost of power, but also to set them up long term so they do not find themselves continuously in this situation.
I recognize MLA Burns.
Thank you. Just going back to Nova Scotia Power and continuing our conversation. We talked about some of the feedback and about the customer process around recovering from the cybersecurity breach. And I wonder, there's some folks in situations where they're not comfortable with online, with digital, with understanding what may have been leaked and what the impact is on them. And when I think of some of the customers, kind of, I guess, elderly folks where they may travel to the bank to make payments and stuff, what are you doing to support customers that are vulnerable and uncomfortable with the situation of not knowing what information is missing and are not wanting to pay their bills online or through banking? Are you helping accommodate them, to give them other options to make them feel comfortable that when they're making a payment that their banking information and their cyber data is not at risk?
I recognize Mr. Lanteigne.
Thank you for the question, Emily Burns. I think for me, maybe just to first talk about payments. You know, for customers, and I believe we talked about this in, not in this committee in November, but in the June Public Accounts Committee. The way most customers actually pay their bills is through their bank. So whether it's online, at the bank, over the phone, even through the bank. And that's, so if anyone was asking me, what would you recommend? I would say that's a great way to do it. Because when that information comes to Nova Scotia Power even, it's very limited in the data we get. It's the customer's name, the amount they've paid, and their Nova Scotia Power account number. None of the banking information is sent from the bank to us. So that's the first recommendation, is that that's a good way to do it. If customers do want to choose to pay in other ways, you know, we still accept checks, you know, so customers can actually do that. And I think the other piece for us is we do know that the situation, like electric bills can always cause questions, even, you know, setting aside the past year. So our customer care team definitely wants to help customers. So we talk to thousands of customers every day. And if they have questions about their bill, we want to help walk them through it. We want to make sure that they understand, you know, how the bill works, but also if they have a balance, what options are available to them. So you're right. We obviously encourage people to check out what we have online and leverage My Account to view their bills and make payments. But if customers still want that option of reaching out and talking to us, that's what our customer care team is there for.
I recognize MLA Fedor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many minutes do we have left? Just curious.
6 minutes, 30 seconds.
Okay, so I want to go back to OSD. Funny enough, I worked in I once worked with OSD, so I know the executive director. I want to ask a question around the urgent situation around people facing utility disconnection. Right? What does a typical response look like? And I'm hoping that you're able to work the committee through what that looks like, because we've heard today that there are a lot of people who are in those scenarios and those situations. So what are the typical tools that OSD has at their present disposal, you know, that helps with utility costs before it becomes a tipping problem or situation for households or for individuals?
I recognize Executive Director Egerton.
Thank you very much for your question, and you'll hold me account to my honesty because you know the department well. So I'd say, I'll start with a slight non-answer. There's no single pathway because the situations people find themselves in is going to be different. We have 35,000 people who are on income assistance. We have another 6,000 or so within the disability support program. And you know, across the province, across genders, everything else. So there's a significant difference in people's experiences therein. Firstly, I would say there have been those efforts I spoke to before about trying to improve the predictability and the amount of money that flows to people who find themselves clients or participants of our department. If a situation arose pertaining to particularly extenuating circumstances with the ability to afford their power, their first protocol would be to contact, in the case of IA, a caseworker, in the case of DSP, a care coordinator. It's easy for me to say from a position of sort of Haligonian head office, but these are the bread and butter of the department. These are the people who work day in, day out to improve the lives of these 40,000 people. So they would first of all help them. The department has diversion funding, it has special needs, it has funding and supports available in those extenuating circumstances. If they were not eligible, if they were not suitable for that funding, that caseworker or that care coordinator would work with service providers. It would work with Nova Scotia. They would work with Nova Scotia Power. They would work with. They would act as sort of navigators to the types of supports that might exist outside of the department. My colleague to my right has referenced a lot that Energy has, but there's also Service Nova Scotia, and there's the federal government, and there's service providers who provide support. So they would be very well equipped to help them navigate that system, avail themselves of the supports that are available, and also, if necessary, help communicate with entities such as Nova Scotia Power to ensure that literally the lights stay on.
I recognize MLA Fateri.
Thank you so much for the answer. I just want to just ask this because in Clayton Parkway, we have a lot of rentals, right? A lot of people who often don't have controls over a lot of these situations and eating problem. So I'm just wondering, how do OSD most important contribution in supporting vulnerable Nova Scotians in the context of not being left behind, both in terms of affordability support and long-term solutions? As in, how do you intercede? How do you help? Because I get a lot of people come to my office, and a lot of them are in all kinds of dire scenarios or situations. I'm just wondering, how do you support the most vulnerable in terms of long-term solutions, and also, that nobody's left behind?
I recognize Executive Director Egerton.
So thank you for your question, and genuinely, if this is repetition or not answering the question, it's not deliberate, so you can steer me the right direction. I'd repeat the fact that we have about 4% of Nova Scotians who interact with OSD. So if you think about our poverty rate in the province being roughly 11.5% at the last measure, you're looking at about a third of people who fall below the poverty line as interacting with the department. So we would work with other departments to try and bolster the supports that might be available to clients who are above the income assistance threshold, but we would not have a direct mandate over those. In terms of those who do fall with an income assistance or with a disability support program, most pertinently, I would point again to the sort of long-term supports that we've introduced, the department has introduced. It probably warrants repetition. The linking of income assistance to CPI, so at least people are not falling further behind, is significant. The investments in the disability support program are very, very significant and allow those 6,000 participants to increasingly live a life of their own choosing in their communities. And I would point again to those sort of generational shifts that we've done, that the department has undertaken. So programs like improvements to the Nova Scotia Child Benefit, programs like PATH, programs or supports such as the school food program, which is not directly a OSD mandate, but one that OSD was intimately involved in establishing, are things that are aimed at creating the conditions to allow people to meet their basic needs more readily, including in things such as power.
We have 14 seconds remaining, so I am going to take the liberty of moving to closing comments, closing remarks. Any of the witnesses who'd like to make closing remarks? I asked to make them brief, just because we've only got 9 minutes left. I'm going to go to Mr. DeVere. Do you have any comments you'd like to make, sir?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think that the reality that we face in my community is that it seems like there's a lot of talk coming from higher levels of government, and what we desperately need to see is real solutions that play out at the local level. There are solutions that are already being tested that are, I would say, at the edges of the type of programming that is taking place at Efficiency Nova Scotia, that we are actually supporting that organization in building on and constructing additional pathways and supports on the local level that actually not just, they don't just add 5% or 6% or 8% to the impact and benefit of those programs. They add 10, 20, 40, 80% of impact. That is enabled through program integration, and some of those results we are seeing because one of the biggest challenges that especially low-income and vulnerable residents have is that they fall off the bandwagon. They don't make it through programs. The ability to support residents to make it all the way through programs, to make sure that they're accessible, that their needs are taken into consideration, that they're trauma-informed, those are the types of solutions that will help Nova Scotia's most vulnerable. So I would like to second the Honourable Derek Momberquet's points about the need to lean into efficiency programs. They are incredibly powerful. They deliver enormous results on the local level, while also looking for broader structural solutions. Because believe me, if there were broader solutions available, people at the municipal level would not have to work so hard to look after our residents because there are provincial and other supports in place that can apply more equally to everyone, rather than that being a patchwork of local programs. Thank you for your time today.
Any further closing remarks? Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you. It was interesting that the title of the topic today that we were given was energy pricing. None of us really talked that much about pricing because the issues, I think, run much deeper than just pricing, although that is an issue. But my focus in a lot of my work has been on energy poverty. And perhaps you wonder why someone from the Ecology Action Center is focused on that. And part of the reason, one, it's a justice issue, and I care about that, but two, the solution for sustainability, which is our mandate, aligns very nicely with the solution for energy poverty. There is a solution, and to the fact that 2 out of 5 Nova Scotian households can't afford their energy. It stresses them. It causes them serious problems where they're making sacrifices. 2 out of every 5. It's higher in Cape Breton. It's astronomical in Escasoni. Something has to be done about this. We have proposed a solution. We, as in everyone at this table, as part of the Energy Poverty Task Force. It's an affordable solution that the government can afford. $50 million are the most recent estimates. That's very reasonable, and it would also decrease over time thanks to the efficiency component of the program that reduces a household's energy use and thus brings their bill down so they're no longer in energy poverty and no longer reliant on the on-bill discount. So it's a problem that is very solvable. There is a solution. It's on your table. I think the people struggling with energy poverty beg of the province to implement that solution. Thank you.
I recognize Mr. Gifford.
Thank you. I'd like to support what Chris just said. I won't repeat it, but I think it's really important that the Energy Poverty Task Force recommendations get taken seriously. And I like the suggestion that came up during the meeting that we meet with the current Minister of Energy, the Premier. So we will try and do that and encourage him to take those proposals seriously. I just wanted to make a couple of other comments. One of them was there was talk about efficiency first in the power system, but I note that in the current contract between Nova Scotia Power and Efficiency One that has just been introduced for review by the Energy Board, that there is no increase in efficiency spending, it's my understanding. And that's, I think, is a problem. And finally, I'd just like to refer back to my comment about the gas plants in Pictou County. My understanding is because they are gas plants and not batteries, that they are going to be very expensive and they will affect power rates over 20 to 30 years, and we should reconsider that.
Thank you. Any additional comments or closing remarks? If not, I will thank all the witnesses, and we will move on quickly to committee business. First discussion is reference to a letter that we received from HRC Innovations Senate Committee requesting to appear along with various supporting documents regarding cannabis excise. Yes, is there any discussion? I see no discussion. Secondly, next discussion point here or on the order is Mr. Bill Curry sent the committee a letter regarding the Department of Natural Resources Integrated Resource Management System. We've all had that. Document. Is there any discussion on that? No discussion there. So Nova Scotia Power responded to a letter sent by the committee following their appearance on November 25th to discuss the review of Nova Scotia Power. Do we have any discussion on that? All right, if there's no other business, our next meeting is May 26th. The topic is impact of the Nova Scotia Loyal Program. Witnesses will be the Department of Agriculture, Department of Growth and Development, and Department of Service Nova Scotia. Seeing no further business, I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Chair.